Can you believe there's maybe 200 million people in the tropical forest zone who have no land in traditional farming areas, they have no jobs. Their big need is to get supper on the table, no more than that. So they go and torch the forest in Amazonia or in Borneo, and they knock off a lot of species by doing that. And if I was in their position, I would do the same. And somebody once said, third world poverty is a luxury we can no longer afford.
As the economy expands, we get more cars, houses, boats, and all of these things as a result of that. So that's good. But it costs in terms of tearing up the ecosystem. We get less services from forests as we cut down trees.
The difference between sustainable and unsustainable growth, well, a typical example would be, let's say, the Aral Sea. Here you had a form of economic development focusing on cotton production, which totally destroyed the environment and ultimately also the cotton production, and is now producing a total desert, a poisoned desert, which is filled with pesticides and DDT and so on. This is an extreme example of unsustainable growth. It's a suicidal approach.
The tragedy that's taking place at the Dead Sea is that the Dead Sea is disappearing. In the last 50 years, we've lost a third of the surface area of the Dead Sea. We've diverted the water primarily for agriculture in the belief that they could turn what is a desert into a breadbasket. The last time that water left the Sea of Galilee was in 1991. But since then, not a drop of water has flown out of the Sea of Galilee. There's a very large pumping station that Israel has built, pumping water out of the Sea of Galilee into the national water carrier and distributing that throughout the region. Instead of water flowing in to the lower Jordan, what we've seen is sewage being discharged into the river. What used to flow into the Dead Sea no longer flows. And of course here, where we would have seen the Dead Sea right in front of us, in fact the Dead Sea used to come past the fence, is now over a kilometre away, a drop of some 25 metres in depth from where the Dead Sea used to be to where the Dead Sea is today. When we lose that habitat, we lose the wildlife. Unique ecosystems, oases that nature has given us are being lost. You don't need to be Jesus anymore to cross the waters. The waters have gone.
When you consider what's happening to our environment, how we're eating into the capital of the earth, if you like, how we're using ecosystem services without valuing them properly. We are, in fact, affecting the services that we depend upon for our life support system.
We don't know the number and the interplay between species, millions of species, what that really contributes to the resilience, stability of their system.
We don't know which specific species or groups of species are the really important ones, or how many species we can lose before we have a big change in the functioning of the planet.
So until we really understand how ecosystems play together to make the whole system function, it would be exceedingly dangerous to identify organisms that we say, well, gee, that's not important.
Consider this. If you're going to climb in an aeroplane,
And you look around and you look out the window and look at the side of your airplane, you see a lot of rivets in there.
and you saw an engineer knocking rivets out of the wing, you'd say, hey, mister, what are you doing? And supposing he says, well, we've got a plane over there that's missing a few hundred rivets, so we're taking 50 rivets out of every plane we have. Got 10,000 rivets in this plane, so we take away 50, it's not going to make any difference.
We don't know which rivets are the most important or the most critical, but it makes sense to keep all the rivets if we can.
Similar with species, we don't know which species we can safely lose for the functioning of the planet, or which species are really important, and if we lose them, it's like popping the critical rivet, and the airplane starts to go down.
If current trends continue, even if the existing reserve network were expanded well beyond what anyone thinks is economically or politically feasible, it's unlikely that we would protect more than maybe 10% of the life forms that we share the planet and maybe the whole universe with today.
This is the biggest decision that any community of human beings has ever taken since we came out of our caves 10,000 years ago, to alter the face of the earth in a very adverse fashion that will persist for millions of years. That is a decision almost as big as all the decisions of whatever sort that have ever been taken throughout all of human history. This raises questions that are far too big for my head to get around, and that's the main reason why I think we should pause and say, do we really know what we're doing? And we'd have to answer, no, we don't know what we're doing, but we're moving ahead as if we know totally the meaning of what we're doing, and we don't.